Today's episode is all about bombing in pro wrestling. You're putting your life on the line, your heart on your sleeve, you're giving everything you got to this performance, but not a single person cares. So what can you do on the fly? How can you turn things around? How can you take your performance from a dud to a stud? Keep watching. If you're one of the lucky few who have ever bombed in front of a live crowd, then you would understand that it is the absolute loneliest feeling you could ever ask for. It is the worst thing a professional wrestler can get, because for a professional wrestler, our entire worth is kind of based on crowd reaction. If that crowd's not responding, we feel like trash. We feel like we suck, what we're doing sucks, it's just not working, we don't know what we're doing. And if you haven't felt that before, then you're either a liar or you just haven't been wrestling long enough yet, because you're all going to get there eventually. But there are definitely some things that you can do in the moment that may turn things around. And it often comes when you don't want it to. It's when you step out of your comfort zone, you go to a new promotion, maybe a bigger opportunity, the crowd doesn't really know you well, they don't know how to take you, and that's when it kind of falls flat. And that's the worst, because a first impression lasts, and you don't want your first impression to be one where the crowd just did not care. It's going to make you less favorable for a booker. It's going to make you feel bad about it. You're going to worry about it for a long time to come. So we want to eliminate that possibility. The first tip I'll give is to interact with your audience, because often what I'll see is the crowd's quiet, the wrestlers start going into their shell, when really that's the exact opposite of where you want to be. If you only interact when the crowd is already loud, then you're missing a massive opportunity. Sometimes they just need that little push, they need that little help. And yeah, I often say that you shouldn't force feed your audience, you shouldn't feed them every clap, every cheer. But sometimes you do need to teach them to some extent what you expect them to do, and then you reward them for that kind of behavior. It might even be as subtle as making eye contact, showing your body language to a different part of the audience. If you can let them in on your journey, on your intent, on what your objective is as a character, then maybe they might start to follow along and make some noise. I tell this story to my trainees a lot. It's something that was relayed to me through others, but from what I've been told, Eddie Guerrero back in the day used to look at a part of the crowd that wasn't making any noise at all. He might have 2 or 3 sides that are loud, but he sees one side that are quite reserved. And when he would sell towards that rope facing the crowd, or when he would look towards that part of the crowd, he would almost eye off just one single kid or one single person in that crowd who wasn't making any noise. And when you start to make eye contact, it starts to bring a bit of an emotional connection. If someone's looking dead in your eyes, anguish on their face, reaching out to you as if they want your help, you almost can't help but cheer them on and start to clap and start to get behind them. It feels awkward to not do that. They need your help. And then when that one kid starts reacting, others around them start reacting. Now you can move to a different side of the crowd, and eventually everyone's behind you, everyone's backing your performance. So play around with things like that. There's no harm in trying, particularly when that performance is not going to plan. The second one is the tempo change, and I often find that when there is no noise, wrestlers just tend to speed things up, go to the next move, go to the next spot. And in some ways that is not the thing to do, because you're not actually giving your crowd time to digest. You're not giving that time to interact, as I just mentioned. But sometimes you do need to pick up the pace briefly. If you feel like the action has been quite slow, maybe you've been wrestling around and they're not really getting into it, then maybe you need to speed up the counters, go into a quick flash pin, kick out. That little sudden increase in tempo might actually be what you need to turn the crowd around. Or vice versa, if you have been going too fast and you're just going spot to spot to spot, maybe you do have to kill that tempo, slow it right down to nothing, and take that time to try to build your crowd back up. Third one is greatest hits. I think eventually every wrestler should have an awareness of what they do that works every single time, regardless of the crowd they're in front of, regardless of the match they're in. It could be a mannerism, a move, a spot, a story that you like to tell, a side of your persona that you like to show. If there's something that always works, keep it in your back pocket for these kinds of situations. Even better if you can do it on the fly. The fourth one is emotional intensity, and I can tell you that probably the most cringiest thing I see in professional wrestling at the independent level is when the crowd is completely dead and the wrestlers just start mouthing off at each other. It just turns into this big melodrama. It's awkward, cringy, it's like amateur theater, and it happens often. It's very easy, in the same way that we go straight to moves and straight to spots when we get nervous and the crowd aren't responding, some people go straight to this. And if you're doing everything at a really high intensity, maybe you're selling at this real high intensity, you're throwing strikes with this super intensity, and the crowd aren't there themselves, they're not going to go from 0 to 10 with you. You kind of need to go just above where the crowd is. So if they're at a low intensity in their noise, in their voice, in their actions in the crowd, then just go slightly above and try to increase the intensity bit by bit by bit. And this could be through some subtle emotional changes. It could be through some subtle tempo changes. They both come back to the overarching gear change, which we've spoken about a lot on this channel. And the last one is to reflect and learn. Every opportunity can be a learning opportunity if you frame it in the right way. Yeah, maybe those first 4 tips didn't work. Maybe the crowd still didn't get behind you. And yeah, they might be a tough crowd, but you should never blame the crowd entirely. That's just a great way to limit your growth and progress. And if you're not there already, head over to worldbeaterwrestling.com. You'll see these kinds of videos a week early and ad-free. And we discuss these sorts of topics with our community of pro wrestlers, trainees, and promoters from around the world. If you're here on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, ring the notification bell. These videos come out for free every single week. And I'll see you next week for another episode of World Beater Wrestling.